The Kingkiller Chronicle will likely never be finished. This is something a lot of fans have had to realize and accept. With such disappointments like Rothfuss failing to read the first chapter that he promised to read for part of a charity fundraiser, and the author's rather cagey attitude toward fans, it's become more and more apparent that if fans get their hopes up, they will ultimately be disappointed. Even when there's a buzz about it online, it is inevitably tempered with many voices of reason and, in some regards, cynicism. We know what Rothfuss' editor said about Book 3. She hasn't seen a word of it. We know what Rothfuss himself said about it. It is an unfixable mess. And after 14 years, we no longer expect anything, nor should we. We have come to believe that Rothfuss will never finish Book 3. But belief is not the same as acceptance. When I pick up The Name of the Wind and The Wise Man's Fear to enjoy them, I can't help wondering about what happens next in The Doors of Stone. I think many fans do the same. Many go back to these books for the language. That's why I do, or the characters, or the world building, or even the plot. But even when we go back for those reasons, we begin to fantasize about what could happen in the third installment. What will happen with Kavoth and Denna? How does Kavoth meet Bast? How does the Cathay's words lead to a bloody war? Why is it even called the Kingkiller Chronicle in the first place? And most of all, what is behind the Doors of Stone? We keep wondering about these questions, even though we know we will likely never get the answers. We have a hard time accepting an unfinished story. We hate it when a TV show gets canceled before it's finished. It's even worse when it's a multi-book series that takes hours to read. We don't like narratives that are not resolved. But why? What is it about an unfinished story that bothers us? There's something in our bones that knows how a story should go. I think this is a right-brained thing. We have an instinct for this. We need to know how the story ends. And when we don't get to know, it prickles that instinct. The journey must be finished. We must go there and back again, or at least settle down somewhere. We must go through the full arc of life. As human beings, missing out on an aspect of life makes us feel like we've been cheated, just like a poorly told or unfinished story. We look back at our childhoods and think about what things we didn't do, the part of being a kid we failed to participate in. Romances are cut off, and we don't get to live them out. Having children feels essential. Parenthood is an aspect of being human. I think this is the same instinct that tells us to finish the story. Go through the full narrative arc. Don't fail us in the end. It's the reason why stories are judged by their ending. How does this all end? Did the character learn through his journey? Was the world made right again? And as a Christian, I think it's an instinct we have for creation. We know the world is not right and we long for something else. Everyone has a longing for some type of paradise or utopia, something that will finish this story and make the world right again. And Jesus is the only one who resolves this story. He is the story's perfect beginning and perfect ending. He is the key to our instinct for a well-told story. Reading the Kingkiller Chronicle again got me thinking about all these things. I tried to read it with a type of acceptance. This story isn't finished, and it probably never will be, and I tried to read it with that in mind. Now, sure, if Book 3 is published next year or 20 years from now, great. I'll read it and probably enjoy it. It'll be good to resolve the story and bring it to some type of ending, but I also think that there might be something rather fitting about this story going unfinished. The most important motif in the story is the one that can be found in the prologue and epilogue of both books. They're all about our failed hero's silence, a silence of 3 parts. Rothfuss' beautiful prose captures this deep, painful, dreadful silence of a man who's lived too much, been too much, lost too much, and done too much. The silence is in 3 parts because, first, the Waystone Inn is silent for a lack of guests and music. Second, the silence of the night outside, far from the sounds of people. And third, the silence of Kavoth himself. Here's a passage from the epilogue of the 2nd book describing the 3rd silence. The Waystone was his, just as the 3rd silence was his. This was appropriate, as it was the greatest silence of the 3, wrapping the others inside itself. It was deep and wide as autumn's ending. It was heavy as a great river-smooth stone. It was the patient cut flower sound of a man who is waiting to die. The foreshadowing is thick. We expect somehow that Kavoth will die in the third book, or he will rise above his despair and live again as the hero he once was. The reader can't help but wonder about this. But we will likely never get to know. And as I read this story this time through, I want to pause and even appreciate that lack. We like our stories to be finished, but in this case, we don't get to have that. And it seems fitting, almost ironic considering the foreshadowing. Someday, Kvoth's waiting should end, but it doesn't. Kvoth still lingers, waiting in the silence. We, as the readers, are waiting alongside Kvoth, and Rothfuss' silence is a fourth silence, wrapping up all the others with it. There is a strange fittingness to this. We all get a taste of that waiting in the silence for the hero to die.